in France. I'm sure you've done a lot of interviews about, the new album, about Deltron.
Right.
So just to make it a bit different.
Okay.
So you're going to please take the computer.
Okay.
And I've put 5 steps into it.
Okay.
There's a little game.
All right.
Actually, it's just about movies, which are about science fiction.
All right.
So the first one I picked was 2001, The Space Odyssey.
Okay. Well, 2001 is the first one. 2001, Space Odyssey. In a way, the story doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing musically, but the vision, the visuals, from the Stark and the beginning of man stuff. It has a lot of symbolism. I guess that, like, not that we're trying to do that symbolism, but that kind of power. Like, the story of 2001 is not really much of an influence to me on Deltron, but the look of 2001 and the way, like, you get the images brought to you, that I think is the main part of the 2001, like the shadows and the apes, the man. It's kind of like, and even the movie in general, the growth in the Deltron has a lot to do with the nature of man. 2001 has a lot to do with the, I don't know, it's the alienation maybe of man, or the beginning. So there's a certain parallel in that respect, but the images are what I think have the most to do with it.
Great. So you should pick the second one.
Okay, the second one is The Matrix. Now, The Matrix, let me think about that for a second. The Matrix, I think the main thing that I would say that is similar to Deltron in terms of The Matrix is it's the little man against society, or against the system. I think I never thought about The Matrix in terms of when I was making Deltron, but in terms of the message, the idea that that people have to band together to fight against the bigger corporation, the bigger government, the bigger whatever.
It's a lot also about the conflict between the man and the machine.
Yeah, well, man and machine, but man and power, really.
Yeah.
And machine might be what you mean by power, I guess, or government or whatever. So yes, it is man versus the machine in that respect.
Great.
Third one.
You can skip it if you want. Huh?
Oh, okay. No, Blade Runner's fine. Blade Runner. Once again, Blade Runner takes place after society has gone through change, and you've reached, I guess you would call it a breaking point of sorts. The difference between Deltron and Blade Runner is very much Blade Runner, the society is still more intact. In Deltron, it's a little bit more like society has crumbled. The futuristic vibe that are in there, we're definitely not what we're thinking about when we're doing Deltron, but at the same time, Blade Runner, because of its significance in science fiction, has painted a picture that casts a shadow over a lot of stuff. So it's indirectly, I would say.
It's also a lot about, to me, all the cyberpunk pictures, images.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, once again, it's like, it's a different society, it's a different setup than what we're doing, but because of when it was made and the nature of what it is, it has a lot to do with things that have, much like the Beatles say, have a lot to do with rock.
Yeah.
You know, you might not even be listening to the Beatles at all, but the shadow's long, you know.
They really started something.
Yes, yes. The Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars.
I had to put one.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The Empire Strikes Back, I'll start here. I don't really go to Star Wars after the first three. I only go to Star Wars, the Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. The other ones I can skip those. So this is a good one for me. Two things about this one. Three things. John Williams, who scored Star Wars, these great orchestral moments. I'm not saying that was the direct influence, but that sound is part of that sound I was going for, like strings and emotion and stuff. And when I was growing up, Star Wars was something that we did listen to. So definitely, for part one, the strings and that stuff, you know, conveying the emotion. I think Star Wars did a very good job of that. Two, it's the rebels versus society again, and that's very much a Deltron topic. So that also parallels along. And then 3, and specifically the Empire Strikes Back, that's part 2 of, I guess, whatever they call this 9-part series or whatever Star Wars is, you know. But in my life, it's part 2 of 3. You know what I mean? And Deltron, The Return, is part 2 of a thing. So like, you have to work with what's been established to go someplace else without forgetting about where you came from. And I think that's Star Wars in us, and that's not about Star Wars, but it's about the idea of doing a sequel to anything you've done. So there you go. And last, 12 Monkeys. Let me see. I haven't seen this one in years. So let me think about this one.
Maybe if I can help you, there's the whole, just to remind you that it's all about the virus that is being propagated. I mean, just like the first Deltron. I remember the track virus.
Right. And then they're all in cages, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I've seen this movie. It's been a long time, so I can't remember it all. But like, it was stopping a virus, right? So that was happening, and they were trying to recreate an anecdote.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was all about also a mental disorder, which is, I think, one of the...
Because every guy was locked up, and he was
everybody was feeling they was really crazy.
Right. But he actually was working on something. He actually wasn't crazy. Yeah. You know, I don't know if that has much to do with the Deltron thing, but the idea of the virus, which we did have a song about in the first album, although it was more of a computer virus, but it's the same thing. It's a philosophical idea or philosophy about how people get affected by how something can affect people, and then they're having to work against it. In our case, the virus actually has more to do with, I would say it's more of like the WikiLeaks kind of thing, where like the idea of the fallacy of the system and what happens. Whereas this one I thought was more about the trying to solve a problem. You know what I mean? I think it doesn't quite apply, but was a great movie regardless.
If you had to pick one science fiction movie that really, inspired you, maybe that was the last one. If you had to pick one that really inspired you, your music globally, and that inspired Deltron,
right?
Would there be one movie?
Well, I never really thought of it that way, because I guess for me personally, musically speaking, the first Star Wars movie with the strings and like the Empire and everything strong, I think that has the most parallels. To be honest, I wasn't thinking about Star Wars when I did it, but it was part of my life. So obviously, everything that like you ever saw when you were a little kid or whatever, it's part of who you are. And Star Wars was a big part, so I'm going to pick that But to be really honest, the kind of science fiction that like I would watch when I was working on records like this, or actually as well as like some other things I was working on where we're getting weirder, it's like a lot of the old Peter Jackson movies, which are more like The Feebles, Dead Alive, Bad Taste, that kind of stuff, because there's this weird sense of absurdity plus fantasy, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying like this is closer to that than Star Wars, because it's much closer to Star Wars, but I just feel like that had a lot to do with the mentality I was thinking of when I was doing some of the absurdity. But like if I was going to think about movies that were more closely related on some parallel, it would probably be Star Wars for the just the little man against the big man and the strings and all that stuff, and also especially not so much in the first Deltron, but the second Deltron we're thinking about Road Warrior, in the sense of like society's just gone and like people are doing what they can to make it. So that was what I would say.